Good evening and welcome. Settle in, dim the lights, and let the noise of the modern world fade away. Tonight we journey back in time, not to a grand palace or a famous battlefield, but to a place so remote, so vast, and so empty it was almost a blank space on the map. We're going to the heart of the Siberian taiga, a seemingly endless ocean of pine and birch, frozen for much of the year and plagued by swarms of insects in its brief, swampy summer. It is a place where human presence is a mere whisper against the roar of nature. But on one particular morning, that roar was silenced by something infinitely louder. A sound that would echo not just through the wilderness, but through the corridors of science and speculation for more than a century. The date is June 30th, 1908. The sun has risen over the Podkamenia Tunguska River basin. For the local Evenki people, semi-nomadic reindeer herders and hunters, it is a day like any other. The air is still, the sky is a brilliant clear blue. A man named S. Semenov, a farmer in the settlement of Vanavara, about 40 miles south of our story's epicenter, is sitting on the porch of his trading post. It's just before 7:15 a.m. Suddenly, the sky to the north splits in two. A brilliant, blinding light flashes, momentarily eclipsing the sun itself. A wave of heat, intense and suffocating, washes over him. It feels, he would later recall, as if his shirt had caught fire. He instinctively throws his hands up to shield his face from the searing heat. The light vanishes as quickly as it appeared, but the silence that follows is heavy, unnatural. And then comes the sound. A deafening rolling boom, like a continuous barrage of artillery fire, shakes the very earth beneath his feet. The shockwave hits his small trading post with the force of a physical blow. It throws him from his chair, knocking him unconscious for a moment. The windows of his house shatter, the ground trembles, and a section of his fence is flattened. When he comes to, the world has changed. The sky is no longer clear. To the north, the colossal pillar of fire and smoke is rising, reaching miles into the atmosphere. A fiery mushroom cloud blooming in the heart of the desolate taiga. Semenov was not alone. Across a region larger than Western Europe, people witnessed the event. In Kerensk, a town hundreds of miles away, residents saw a fiery column of light on the horizon. The Trans-Siberian Railway, over 375 miles from the blast, had to be halted as the rails trembled and the engineer feared a derailment. The sound was heard as far as 600 miles away. But the most bizarre effects were yet to come. For the next several nights, the skies over Asia and Europe glowed with an eerie silvery light. In London, people could read newspapers outdoors at midnight. In Scotland, photographs were taken of the docks in the dead of night, illuminated by this strange, unnatural twilight. The sky was filled with beautiful, shimmering noctilucent clouds, something normally only seen in polar regions. It was as if the planet itself was reacting to a wound, a planetary fever dream playing out in the upper atmosphere. The world had just witnessed an explosion with an estimated force of 10 to 15 megatons of TN-Tabout, 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It had flattened over 80 million trees across an area of nearly 800 square miles, an area larger than modern-day Tokyo. And yet, in 1908, the world barely registered it. Russia was a tumultuous place, wrestling with political upheaval. The story of a strange explosion in a desolate, unpopulated corner of its empire was little more than a local curiosity, a footnote in provincial newspapers. The witnesses were few, scattered, and their accounts dismissed as peasant superstition. The Great Tunguska event, as it would come to be known, fell into silence. The forest lay dead and flattened, pointing away from a hidden center. The eerie glow in the sky faded, and the greatest mystery explosion of the modern era was left to fester, undisturbed, in the heart of the Siberian wilderness. For 13 years, no one from the outside world would set foot in this vast arboreal graveyard. No one knew what had caused the day the sky fell. Was it an asteroid impact? A comet? Or was it, as some would later whisper, something else entirely? The search for that answer would become one of the most obsessive, frustrating, and fascinating quests in scientific history. The first man to truly take up this quest was a rugged, determined Russian mineralogist named Leonid Kulik. Kulik was a man of science, but he also had a romantic soul, captivated by the power and mystery of meteorites. In 1921, while on an expedition, he stumbled upon early, fragmented accounts of the 1908 event. The stories of a pillar of fire and a deafening roar immediately sparked his imagination. He became convinced that a gigantic iron meteorite had struck the Earth in that remote part of Siberia. If he could find it, it would be a scientific treasure trove, a massive piece of another world delivered right to his nation's doorstep. But convincing the fledgling Soviet government to fund an expedition into one of the most inaccessible places on Earth, based on what amounted to old campfire stories, was no easy task. It took him years of relentless lobbying. Finally, in 1927, with meager funding and a small team, Kulik set off on his first real expedition to the Tunguska region. The journey itself was an epic undertaking, a testament to the sheer isolation of the blast zone. It involved a long ride on the Trans-Siberian Railway, a voyage up treacherous, ice-choked rivers on a crude boat, and finally a long, arduous trek on horseback and foot through dense, swampy, mosquito-infested taiga, guided by local Evenki hunters who were initially reluctant to lead him to what they called a cursed place. They spoke of a new god, Agdi, the god of fire, who had descended and destroyed the forest. They believed the area was taboo. As Kulik and his team drew closer, the landscape began to change. They found trees with their tops scorched and branches stripped bare, all pointing in the same direction. The signs of a colossal force were everywhere. And then, after weeks of travel, they crested a ridge and saw it. The scene that unfolded before them was one of surreal, almost biblical devastation. As far as the eye could see, the forest was gone. In its place was a sea of dead trees, millions of them, lying in a radial pattern, their trunks all pointing away from a central point on the horizon. It was like the aftermath of a colossal explosion, a silent, wooden testament to an unimaginable power. The trees at the very edge of the blast zone were knocked over, while those closer to the center had been stripped of their branches and bark, left standing like a forest of ghostly telegraph poles. Kulik had found it. He was at the epicenter of the Tunguska event. He was ecstatic. He believed he was on the verge of the greatest discovery of his life. Somewhere in the middle of this vast circular graveyard, there had to be an enormous impact crater. And within that crater the prize, the Tunguska meteorite. He and his team pushed forward, towards the heart of the devastation. They navigated the swampy, difficult terrain, their boots sinking into the marshy ground. They expected to find a massive hole in the ground, a great bowl-shaped depression filled with water and extraterrestrial metal. They reached the center and found nothing. There was no crater. There were a few small boggy depressions, but nothing that could be called an impact crater from an object capable of such widespread destruction. Kulik was baffled. He searched tirelessly. He surveyed the area, took photographs, and interviewed the last remaining local witnesses. He led 3 more expeditions to the site over the next decade, enduring incredible hardship. He drained bogs hoping to find the meteorite buried in the mud. He found microscopic silicate and magnetite spheres embedded in the soil, possible evidence of a high-temperature event, but he never found a single fragment of the meteorite he was so sure was there. He never found his crater. The central paradox of the Tunguska event was now established. All the evidence of a massive explosion, but none of the expected physical evidence of a direct impact. It was a cosmic crime scene with the body count of 80 million trees. But the murder weapon had vanished without a trace. Kulik's quest, which had begun with such certainty, had only deepened the mystery. He would never solve it. His work was cut short by the outbreak of World War II. He joined the Red Army, was captured by the Germans, and died of typhus in a prison camp in 1942. The secret of Tunguska, it seemed, would die with him. In the decades following Kulik's death, the Tunguska event transitioned from a niche scientific puzzle to a global enigma. With the dawn of the atomic age, humanity now had a reference point for what a massive airburst explosion looked like. The mushroom cloud described by the witnesses, the searing thermal flash, the powerful shockwave all sounded terrifyingly familiar. Scientists began to re-examine the evidence, armed with a new understanding of physics. And from this, the leading scientific theory began to take shape. This theory posits that the Tunguska object was not a large, solid iron meteorite as Kulik had believed, but rather a stony asteroid or, more likely, a small comet. Instead of striking the ground, this celestial body entered the Earth's atmosphere at an immense speed, perhaps as fast as 60,000 miles per hour. As it plunged through the air, the immense pressure and friction caused it to heat up, compress, and then catastrophically disintegrate in a massive aerial burst, somewhere between 3 and 6 miles above the Siberian taiga. This airburst hypothesis elegantly solves the central problem of the missing crater. The destructive force wasn't from a physical impact, but from the superheated, expanding shockwave of the explosion itself. This is what flattened the forest and generated the thermal flash that burned Semenov's shirt. An asteroid impact event doesn't necessarily have to leave an impact crater. The comet hypothesis is particularly compelling. A comet is essentially a dirty snowball, a fragile agglomeration of ice, dust, and rock. Such a body would be much more likely to completely vaporize during an airburst, leaving behind no significant fragments for Kulik to find. This could also explain the strange glowing skies over Europe. The explosion of an icy comet would have injected vast quantities of water vapor and dust high into the mesosphere, creating the very noctilucent clouds that were so widely observed. Modern research seems to support this. Analysis of peat layers from the Tunguska region has revealed microscopic glassy spheres and unusual concentrations of elements like iridium and nickel, which are more common in extraterrestrial objects than on Earth's surface. In 2013, researchers analyzing rock samples from the area claimed to have found traces of lensdolite, a form of diamond known to form under the extreme shock pressure of a meteorite impact. This evidence all points towards a celestial visitor. For most of the scientific community, this is where the story ends. The Tunguska event was a 1-in-1,000-year airburst from a comet or asteroid. A dramatic and powerful natural event, but a natural one nonetheless. It serves as a chilling reminder of the cosmic shooting gallery we live in. But, is it truly that simple? The complete absence of any large, identifiable fragments and the sheer strangeness of the event have left the door open just enough for other, more exotic theories to slip through. And it is in these shadows of scientific uncertainty that the Tunguska mystery truly comes alive, transforming from a geological puzzle into a modern legend. What if the object that exploded over Siberia wasn't made of rock and ice, but of something far more alien? One of the earliest and most mind-bending theories proposed that the Tunguska object was a tiny piece of antimatter. Antimatter is the mirror image of regular matter. When matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other in a burst of pure energy, far more efficient and powerful than any nuclear reaction. An encounter with even a small chunk of antimatter would release a colossal amount of energy, consistent with the Tunguska blast. And crucially, it would leave behind no physical residue whatsoever. It would simply vanish. It's a perfect fit, except for one glaring problem. Where would a chunk of antimatter come from? In our corner of the universe, Matter 1, we have never observed a naturally occurring macroscopic piece of antimatter. For it to travel across the cosmos and find its way to Earth is a statistical improbability of astronomical proportions. A similar, and perhaps even more tantalizing idea is that the Earth was struck by a microscopic black hole. A primordial black hole, a theoretical remnant from the Big Bang. no bigger than a grain of sand but with the mass of a mountain. Such an object passing through our atmosphere would create a cylindrical shockwave of superheated plasma, perfectly explaining the explosion and the pattern of felled trees. And, of course, it would leave no crater and no fragments. It would pass straight through the Earth and out the other side. For a time, scientists searched for evidence of an exit wound, a seismic disturbance in the North Atlantic, but found nothing. Like the antimatter theory, it's an idea that fits the evidence beautifully but requires an object whose very existence is still purely theoretical. But perhaps the answer isn't in the cosmos but right here on Earth. This is where the story takes a turn towards the conspiratorial and enters the realm of one of history's most brilliant and enigmatic minds, Nikola Tesla. At the time of the Tunguska event in 1908, Tesla was deep into his experiments with the wireless transmission of energy. His grandest project was the Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, a colossal structure he believed could broadcast electrical power to any point on the globe. The theory goes that on the morning of June 30th, Tesla, in a bid to prove his technology, conducted a test. Perhaps he was aiming for the North Pole, to support an expedition by Robert Peary, but miscalculated. Instead of the Arctic, a tremendous bolt of energy was unleashed across the globe, culminating in the mystery explosion over the empty wilderness of Siberia. Proponents of this theory point to Tesla's own cryptic remarks about powerful weapons and energy beams. They note that the location of Tunguska is nearly on a direct geodesic line from Wardenclyffe. It's a thrilling narrative casting Tesla as a real-life mad scientist who inadvertently scarred the face of the planet. But it is, almost certainly, pure fiction. By 1908, Tesla was in financial ruin. His Wardenclyffe project was largely defunct, and there is absolutely no evidence he was conducting any large-scale experiments at that time. It's a fantastic story, but a story is all it is. And that brings us to the most persistent and popular of all the fringe theories, the theory that gave the Tunguska mystery its place in modern folklore. The idea that the object that exploded over the taiga was not a natural phenomenon at all, but a technological one. That it was an alien spacecraft. This idea was first popularized in a 1946 science fiction story by the Soviet writer Alexander Kazantsev, who had noted the striking similarities between the Tunguska blast and the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. He imagined an alien vessel, powered by a nuclear reactor, suffering a catastrophic malfunction as it tried to land or draw water from Lake Baikal. The resulting nuclear explosion would explain the immense power, the thermal flash, and the lack of an impact crater. What began as fiction quickly took on a life of its own. It captured the public imagination in a way that comets and asteroids never could. It painted a picture of alien visitors, a silent, failed arrival that ended in tragedy. Some have even gone further, suggesting it wasn't an accident. They proposed that the alien ship detected an incoming meteorite that threatened to cause an extinction-level event, and heroically intercepted and destroyed it over an unpopulated area, sacrificing themselves to save humanity. In this version, the Tunguska event is not a story of destruction, but one of silent, unacknowledged salvation. Soviet-era ufologists flocked to the site, searching not for meteorite fragments, but for scraps of exotic alloys and signs of advanced technology. They found strange bits of metal, but these were later identified as remnants of Kulik's own expeditions or industrial debris. No credible evidence of an extraterrestrial craft has ever been discovered. And yet the idea endures. It endures because it speaks to our deep-seated desire for the universe to be more than just cold, empty space and random collisions. It offers meaning, intent, and narrative to an otherwise chaotic event. It transforms a random act of cosmic violence into a story with characters, however unseen. So, after more than a century of searching, what are we left with? We stand on a ridge, looking out over a forest that has now largely regrown, hiding the scars of 1908. The ghostly telegraph poles of dead trees have mostly rotted away, returning to the soil. The mystery, however, remains. The overwhelming scientific consensus points to a natural cause, the airburst of a comet or a stony asteroid. It is the simplest explanation, the one that fits most of the known facts. It is the answer of a rational, ordered universe governed by the laws of physics. And yet, the story isn't quite closed. The lack of definitive, macroscopic fragments is still a nagging inconsistency. The sheer scale of the event still beggars belief. The Tunguska event sits in a fascinating gray area between known fact and tantalizing speculation. It is both a solved scientific case and an unsolved popular mystery. Perhaps its greatest legacy is not the answer itself, but the questions it forces us to ask. It was the first event of its kind to be recorded in the modern era. A brutal wake-up call from the cosmos. It reminded a species just beginning to master its own planet that we are, in the grand scheme of things, incredibly vulnerable. We live on a beautiful blue marble in a shooting gallery. The 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor, which exploded over another Russian city, was a smaller, more recent echo of Tunguska. A reminder that the threat is real and ongoing. Today, agencies around the world scan the skies for near-Earth objects, a direct result of the lesson first taught by that mystery explosion over Siberia. The Tunguska event is a ghost in the historical record. It's a story of a moment when the universe reached down and touched our world with terrifying force, leaving behind a wound on the landscape and a permanent question mark in our minds. Whether it was a rock, a ball of ice, or something far stranger, its echo can still be heard in the rustling leaves of the new taiga, a whisper of immense power and profound mystery. It reminds us that there are still vast, uncharted territories, not just on our planet, but in our understanding of the universe itself, and that sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that don't have a final page. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Siberian wilderness. If you found this exploration of the Tunguska event as fascinating as we do, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this story with someone else who appreciates the great unsolved mysteries of our world. In our next episode, we will leave the forests of Earth behind and turn our ears to the stars to investigate a tantalizing 72-second transmission from deep space that could be the most compelling evidence we have of intelligent life beyond our own. The Wow signal. What is your theory on what caused the blast at Tunguska? A natural asteroid impact, a fringe scientific phenomenon, or something else entirely? We'd love to read your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious,